Hi, I'm Gretchen Greene. I'm a fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Public Policy. I'm going to talk to you today about facial recognition and some of the ethics and policy issues attached to it. So, any of you who watch crime shows, at least in the US, are well familiar with the idea that, oh, we have this video of a crime happening over here. If only we knew who that was, we'll just run it through our facial recognition system. We have this list over here that's compiled from all of these sources, and boop, 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 oh, we know who it is. That actually is John Smith. He's a known terrorist, and we've got pictures now that we can connect with where else he is, information about what flight he just came into LAX on. So there are systems like that. Whether they work quite as well or as quickly or have as big a database as they show on TV, that's another question. But a lot of states in the US are contributing driver's license photographs, and the State Department contributes photographs from passports. And then law enforcement agencies get together and contribute pictures from people who are arrested. It does start to get to be a lot of pictures. And then we have, a few months ago, there was news out about the company Clearview. And so we've got the government database and the government uses, specifically in law enforcement, and I'll talk about some other uses. And then we've got the companies like Facebook, Apple. So if you have an iPhone, you can unlock it with your face if it's a recent model. And if you have some other devices, you may be able to do the same thing using it as a password. We've also got Facebook, where at least in some countries, they may have stopped in Europe now because of GDPR, but when you tag your friends and your family and you say, oh, who are these people in this picture? You're training the machine learning model. That's a facial recognition classification system that will then say, oh, I know who that is. I know who that is. That's Joaquin, and that's Paulette, and that's Amy, because I've seen them before. Clearview has combined these things. It's gone and searched the web for all of the pictures that it can find and then put them into a database and marketed it back to law enforcement. So now they're not just looking at the government pictures. They also have a cheap way to search all throughout the internet for other pictures of you. And if you imagine taking every picture of you that has ever been taken and think about all the information that is there. So there's information about your relationships, your associations, your social networks. There's information there about your political activities, your hobbies, your identity, your wealth. So if you start to look at pictures, you see where have you been by identifying what's in the background. What kinds of things have you experienced? Is there a picture of you at a soccer game? Does it show what team that you were rooting for? Can you tell by what color the people around you were wearing or what you were wearing? Can you tell what time of year it was, what stadium it was? Maybe, if you have other pictures to compare it to. You start to get information about where you went to school and who shows up in a lot of your pictures and over what time periods. From the pictures alone, I assume you could tell when you started dating someone and when you stopped. Even if you didn't see close physical contact, we're not actually seeing you dancing together in a slow dance. But maybe we are. And if we're not, we're together all the time. And we know you're not related because we don't see other pictures we would have seen if you were. So you can start to get all of this information just by being able to tell that that's you in the picture. And they're the pictures that you put up on the internet. And you could stop doing that today if you'd like, but it isn't going to stop your friends and your family from putting pictures up on the internet. And it's not going to take down any of the pictures that went up before today. And so if you just go cold turkey, you will actually have to do very socially awkward things if you want to keep anyone else going forward from adding to these databases. Even if they don't tag them, if they just put them up, there's probably enough information out there already about which ones are you that the facial recognition system can grab the new ones. So it's a little bit about what's out there and what you could see if all you had was those pictures. So think about if all of the outdoor cameras were connected, and that depends a little bit on where you live. London is renowned for the number of CCTV cameras, but other places have their share. So if you imagine at every street corner, say, there was a camera that if you walked past it would know that you were there because it had facial recognition, and it would put that back. I mean, the camera itself doesn't have to have it, but that footage has to go someplace that does. Well, now for your outdoor walking activities, if we know you were at this corner, and we know 5 minutes later you were at this corner, and 5 minutes later you were at this corner, and so on, we have a pretty good idea you probably walked this line. You didn't just teleport from one corner to the next. And maybe, you went over here and came back, but we know you didn't go by another corner. So we start to be able to track you all across the city. And if we didn't just do this on one day, and I know it depends, maybe you drive everywhere, but maybe it's a good camera and it can see inside your car. But even if we just take the people, we'll just assume that you're at university, for instance, or if you were too young to have a car, maybe you're in your parents' car. But if you can do this tracking, and now you say some of these cameras are going to be in stores, and I'm going to see, what's happening in the store, because the cameras are in stores. California had California Privacy Consumer Protection Act, CCPA, came out, went into effect January 1st, and all of a sudden, because of the disclosure requirements, we know Macy's has cameras in their store that are using facial recognition for fraud detection. And we know some other stores have cameras in their store using facial recognition. And we know they're selling information. And we know they're combining this information with other information. So they're watching people. They're using cameras and other sensors. They're also using sensors from the phone to determine location. How long do you stand in front of a certain product? Do you interact with it? Do you seem engaged? What do you seem to be looking at? Let's follow your eyes. And what have you bought in the past? Because if we can do facial recognition and we can line it up to who you are, then we have other information about you. And our partners that we're selling things to and we're buying things from, they do too. So all of these things can start to come together. Some of the uses, so the driver's licenses, the reason they're available, those pictures, to be sold, and why that happened fairly early, is it was for fraud detection was the original use in the departments of motor vehicle. And it was, is someone applying for two different driver's licenses using the same face? And the same thing was a worry for passports. Is there some sort of fraud going on? There's the question of benefits, fraud or eligibility, where biometrics are being used to determine, are you the one who qualified for these benefits, or are you someone else trying to sneak into the system? It's being used to try to reunite separated refugee families, because if one of them has a picture of the rest of the family and then the rest of the family goes and has their picture taken, those things can be brought together, which seems like a beautiful use. And yet, then there's also the question of, if people are being forced to have their picture taken and put into a facial recognition system, are there problems with that? Well, if you were in the US and you did not agree with the federal immigration policy, then you wouldn't necessarily want to help ICE, which is the Immigration Enforcement Office. Who do you think, if you were ICE, you'd like to talk to? You'd like to talk to the people who have facial recognition systems for you especially those people in the stores. I'm not saying that they are, but if I were them, I would, because people have to go to stores, because they have to eat and they have to have clothes. And they don't necessarily have to go to the store. Maybe they can give money to someone else and get them to go into the store. And that's something that like ICE has been trying to catch people by catching people who are going to stores. Facial recognition would be a way to do that. If it were available cheaply to private investigators, imagine if you were in the witness protection program. So in the US, that's the program by the federal government. If you testify for a serious crime where the defendant is so dangerous that the only way that people can be convinced that they should testify is if they, and maybe they and their family, can be given completely new identities by the federal government, moved to a new location so that they won't be killed. No one is going to testify if that was the thing that they needed, if they know that that defendant and the defendant's colleagues can access national networks of faces that are tied to facial recognition systems where they can say, this is the one I want you to find, and it can search and find them. Think about the case of a domestic violence victim and the same thing. They're trying to hide. They don't have the same support by the federal government, but they're trying to do the same thing, trying to keep from being killed. So if the ability to search for people by their faces in sort of national network databases becomes easily available and cheap, it becomes problematic. But even if it's more expensive and it's only the government or only powerful corporations, even if it's only online and not in person, there are problems with it. It's a chilling effect on civil liberties to attend political rallies, to attend churches or houses of worship, if you're worried that it's unpopular, or that you would be likely to be a victim of a hate crime. There are activities you will be afraid to do if it's too easy to figure out that it was you that was there. So those are some of the concerns to think about, and I'm happy to talk with any of you who are interested in talking any further. Now you have kind of a survey of some of the uses and some of the concerns. It's often marketed as either for convenience or security. So think about whether you think those are good enough reasons. We do a lot of things for convenience. And it's always hard to make an argument against security. But there are other kinds of security to keep the freedoms that we have. Thanks very much. Have a great hackathon.